5 Live Formula One.
Welcome to the F1 paddock here at the Losail International Circuit, just outside Doha in Qatar. And we have just watched the sprint race, 19 laps. And I would say we are talking to you just after the checkered flag has flown, but because there's been rather a lot going on, it's taken a while to catch our breath, process everything we've seen. We had Oscar Piastri win the sprint race, but the biggest headline coming out of the Formula One world this evening is that Max Verstappen in the Red Bull racing car has taken his third consecutive world title. He is a 3-time world champion. That is the biggest news story. So we are going to talk about Max Verstappen. I think we've spoken about him so much this season already. His dominance has been incredible. He is such an impressive driver. Let's unpick what we have just witnessed on this Saturday. Yes, a Saturday. More weird and wonderful stats to go against Max Verstappen's tally. What a weekend we are having here in Qatar. To talk through what we've seen, I'm joined by our lead commentator, Harry Benjamin, and racing driver, Alex Brundle. Harry Benjamin, we ummed and ahed, didn't we? Whether it would be this evening, the sprint race, or whether it would be the Grand Prix when Max Verstappen sealed his third world title. And it is the Saturday. It will go down in the history books as the world title being sealed by Max Verstappen in 2023 on Saturday, the 7th of October. Did you see it coming right back in March? I think we kind of got a flavour of it, didn't we, when he won the Bahrain Grand Prix, the season opener?
Yeah, we did. But, Sergio Perez put in an admirable performance in the early part of the season, but then really it all fell apart. And when Verstappen and that run of 10 consecutive race wins, setting records left, right and centre, being a one-man band, we've talked about it before, he could have won the Constructors' Championship on his own, such as the amount of points he has amassed. And even when he takes the title, of course, he still has to set a record. He's not the first 3-time champion, of course, but he does become the first sprint champion on a Saturday. We've had Saturday champions in the form of Piquet and Brabham and Hill and Rosberg, but never has a championship been won during a sprint race. There is dominance, and then there is consistency and consistently dominant. I don't think we've seen anything like this before in terms of dominance. He's been on another level. And we've had dominance before in Formula One. Obviously, it's cyclical, but this feels like it's just on another level.
Oh, it has been amazing to witness. Obviously, we're lucky enough to come to the races and see Max Verstappen in person, see him operate weekend in, weekend out. And Alex Brundle, it's been amazing, hasn't it? And I do feel the narrative has changed this year. We started off being a little bit boo-hooey about the fact it was going to be a one-horse race. But actually now it's just a real pleasure to see someone so at one with their machine. And it has just been brilliant to see Max Verstappen in that RB19 Red Bull car perform at the very, very top. That's why we show up on a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon, isn't it? To see the best of the best.
It certainly is impressive, isn't it? And you have to go back to the Schumacher years to find somebody who has clinched a world championship with 6 Grand Prix still remaining. And your mind goes back to those years when you see this kind of dominance, whether though it's Schumacher, whether it's Vettel, whether it's Lewis Hamilton. These eras of Formula One stand out with their key drivers having that dominant position, and Max Verstappen quite clearly that driver at the moment. I think the most impressive thing, though, about this season and why it stands out is that run of consecutive victories he managed to put together between Miami and Monza through the middle of the year. And that's why I believe his opponents are lauding him so impressively, so aggressively through this weekend, even before he'd sealed the championship. They are impressed by how he's connecting wins together.
Yeah, it has been the most amazing season for Max Verstappen, and a weird way to take that title when his teammate Checo Perez crashed out. An unfortunate bystander almost caught up in a collection of cars with Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas and Esteban Ocon in the Alpine. Sergio Perez's race ended prematurely in the sprint race, and at that point Max Verstappen knew he was a 3-time world champion. So when he came into the media pen a little earlier on, I asked him what was going through his mind during those final few laps of the sprint.
I was still trying to win the race, to be honest. Of course, the safety cars didn't help us, but I still tried to push to the end. to try and be as close as I could. But it was quite a hectic race. I think a lot of things happened there, but we stayed out of trouble, and of course made sure that we won the title today. And yeah, of course, it's a very, very proud moment. I never thought that I would be able to win 3 titles, so I'm very happy at the moment.
Can you put into words what you have sacrificed to be this successful and what your family have sacrificed as well?
It's a tough one. I mean, my family, they gave everything they had in their knowledge as well and experience. But also, of course, I think, of course, I've been a lucky person. But I think it's also very important to just work hard for your goals and try not to dream too much about what's potentially possible. Just go for it.
We've run out of superlatives to describe your year. How would you describe 2023?
It's been very enjoyable, and of course, in terms of wins, it's been incredible. But there's still a few more races to go where I want to do well.
Oh, good luck with those as well. Well done. Unreal, isn't it? I mean, already lining up a few more race victories just to add to his tally in 2023. And that's the other thing, isn't it? It's the mindset. He wanted to win the sprint. He wanted to take the title in emphatic fashion. No one was doubting that he was going to take the title. No one would have minded if he'd even finished off the podium. The photos would have been a bit useless. But hey, look, he wanted to do it. He wanted to stand on the top step of the podium. He was denied by Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. But I just love that mindset. Just on to the next thing. He's already probably eyeing up the US Grand Prix in a couple of weeks' time for another victory, and that's just the mindset of a racing driver, isn't it?
That's the
Alex Brundle
mindset.
Or Harry Benjamin.
Harry Brundle.
Harry Brundle.
But actually, that is the driver. Well, it's not every driver mindset, but it's a Max mindset. He doesn't really care about the off track. He wants to win, and that's it.
He's focused on the next challenge, and that is a healthy mindset, and it does show you the level of coaching and mind management that is going on at this high level in Formula One. As soon as the moment has passed, Max Verstappen's mind focuses instantly to the next challenge. It's a very, very healthy way, and it's a very, very effective way to go about your sport. And I do think in the loud, complex, convoluted sometimes, and very reactive way of Formula One, a reactive era of Formula One we have, almost a social media era of Formula One. That is one of the reasons why Max Verstappen has been as successful as he has.
Is it because, though, he came in so young, as the youngest driver in Formula One at the time? He's had to mature regardless. I mean, when he first came in, did that first practice session, Japan 14, everyone sort of go, oh, who is this Verstappen kid? He's not even in GP2 at the time. And look at him now.
You're really dealing with the first era of driver here who have conditioned not only their body, that came in sort of mid to late 90s, the extreme fitness of Formula One drivers, and then through the 2000s and into 2010s it increased and increased. Now you're dealing with the first era of racing driver who have conditioned their minds from a very young age, and that is something which I believe you can see even more acutely potentially in the young man who won the race, Oscar Piastri, who has an incredible calmness of mind, but it's definitely something which has contributed to the dominance of Max Verstappen, who's further through his career.
Yeah, we'll talk about Oscar Piastri in a little bit on the pod, but I found it very interesting, and I commented to you guys at the time in commentary that it was Nico Rosberg, the 2016 world champion, who was interviewing the top 3 at the end of the sprint this evening. Of course, he took his world championship and then he left the sport. Okay, he's come back as a broadcaster, but he couldn't, or at least didn't feel he was going to be able to operate again at that level to take another world title. And I remember asking Max Verstappen at the end of 2021, when he'd taken his first world championship, if he could understand drivers that walk away after tasting that first bit of success and that first world championship. And he said, absolutely not. I just want more. And of course, he's added 2 more to his tally, and it feels like he's going to add more and more and more. How many years do you think Red Bull and Max Verstappen, because I feel Max Verstappen's got it in him, but how long can Red Bull give him a car that he can take right to the front?
Well, the next big regulation change is 2026, isn't it? So he could well be the dominant force until that stage, but the way Red Bull, with Adrian Newey as well at the helm, designing that car, you can't rule them out for beyond that. I think with the idea about Rosberg as well, I suppose the difference is that he had to use everything and more to go up against Lewis Hamilton not just Lewis Hamilton, but a teammate as well. Whereas the difference is Verstappen hasn't really had that. Yes, he's had to go up against Hamilton before, absolutely. But there's a difference when you're in two different teams and very different stages of their career. And so since that moment, going on to get those consecutive championship wins, he's 26 years old. We're the same age. And that puts me to shame. But he could
and that's
go
where
on.
the similarities end, Harry.
That's where but he could.
I don't know. I think the mind
30,
of Harry Benjamin has been trained acutely from a young age.
He could retire at 30 and be one of the most successful Formula One drivers there's ever been.
But it's that. The way that Verstappen goes
I've got
forward.
to tell you, actually, I'm just watching Max Verstappen right now, and what are we, a couple of hours maybe after the checkered flag has flown, and he's still flanked by so many cameramen, photographers, team members. Christian Horner's at the back of the crew trying to keep up with Max. I think he has now finally run into the back area of the Red Bull hospitality, because when he was talking to us in the media pen, we were asking, have you spoken to your dad, Jos Verstappen? He's like, no, I haven't had a chance yet, because of course he has to go and do all the media pen duties. So it's a really tough one, isn't it? When you want to celebrate with your friends and family, you got to talk to the likes of me.
He's got to get his 8 hours sleep in as well, Alex.
There's the minor factor of the Qatar Grand Prix to do tomorrow as well, and needs to make sure he's prepared for that one. So that will be somewhat muting the celebrations, it must be said. But it just doesn't seem to take that toll on him, does it? Coming back again to your great point about Nico Rosberg, Rosanna, that same dismissive mindset that he has been challenged for throughout his early career. There was a period where the rest of the Formula One grid were calling him Mad Max for how much he didn't care about about the feedback of the other competitors. But what that does appear to do is protect his mental space from the other drivers, from the endless commentary about everything that he's doing, which I think will give him longevity if he seeks it at this level of sport.
But you know what I find weird is actually coming into this weekend, a lot of us in the media media zone commented on how chatty and relaxed Max was, because he's not well known for being a real chatter. I mean, a nice guy, talks to you when you needs to, but he was really quite cheerful. And I thought, gosh, on a weekend where you almost want to like batten down the hatches, focus on what you've got to do, he wasn't. He was really up for long chats and being quite kind of laughy and jokey. Yeah, which I don't know, it's a change.
Pressure's off though, isn't it, for him? The title isn't a pressure for him. He was either going to do it today or tomorrow, and when you have...
No belief in Checo Perez, have you, Harry Benjamin? No belief.
I'm sure we'll come on to that. But, but speak of Perez, Verstappen's a teammate crusher, destroyer. He has that team wrapped around his finger. The number one car, the number one driver in the number one team. He doesn't need to be chatty if he needs to. He can control his level of chatter. And I think maybe because there's something about a night race as well, which I think kind of makes things a little bit more relaxed on a Grand Prix weekend.
Come on, Rosanna. You have spent time around a full complaint, which I always use as the plural noun for racing drivers, a full complaint of racing drivers in your time. You know there is no one chattier than a happy racing driver who's succeeding and on the brink of succeeding, and no one more difficult than one who's just had a bad day. And
I think Stroll got about 4 words out across the weekend.
It was 9.
I did ask Stroll. I asked Lance Stroll earlier, actually, when he came out after the sprint race, whether he's still enjoying Formula One, and I've never seen a wider smile, perhaps on the Cheshire Cat, but honestly, he's like, yeah. I said, really? He's like, yeah. So huge smile from Lance Stroll. So I got, a couple more words out of him. So is that 11 words for the weekend?
let me jot that down. Hang on.
Take those to the bank. We're striking those off in the commentary box as you speak.
No, you are right. Of course, when you are riding high, you have time to chat to people. You're more amenable in interviews and things. But it was quite funny. Max joked, saying, actually, we could put all the microphones together because such is the way the world works. We all were asking the same sort of questions of him, but he was very giving of his time, and I'm sure he's going to be here at the track for quite some time. But as you mentioned, Alex, there is that small little detail of the Qatar Grand Prix tomorrow. He's got to come out and fight again. I hope he's going to be here. I feel like he will be. I don't think he's going to go too hard and heavy tonight.
What, you don't think he's going to turn up?
Well, I don't know. There was a risk, I guess.
I mean, he could start from his hotel room and probably still win the race.
Dear.
But I just to sort of before we go full Grand Prix, I think for me, for Verstappen, when we talk about what a season he's had, I mean, the maturity I think he's displayed over the last couple of seasons is attributes to his chattiness as well. But I go back to Miami, and I think of Miami, the beginning of this run of 10 consecutive wins, where he qualified in ninth, and his teammate Perez was on pole and leading the majority of that race. And Verstappen eased through the field. His tyres were just speaking to him. And then towards the end of the race, Perez was a sitting duck, and it wasn't strategy that made that happen. It was just Verstappen's out-and-out pace. He got Perez and finished 5 seconds in front of him. And that, to me, is one of the highlights, one of the key points of Verstappen's season, and highlights his dominance and how easy it has been for him.
Just unstoppable, isn't it? And I just love the fact he's already lining up a few more victories to see the season out. I mean, just a wonder to watch. And again, I'm just standing here watching several media crews setting up interview spaces to have another sit down with Max Verstappen. He is the man of the moment, as you would expect. But I think there are some other people we should probably chat about, and I'm definitely putting Oscar Piastri in the McLaren on that list. So let's hear from our sprint race winner, Oscar Piastri, the Australian rookie, taking his maiden victory in Formula One.
Oscar, congratulations. What a moment. I asked you about dreaming of a first podium. You must have dreamt of a first win. How does it live up to it in reality?
It's cool. I'll be honest, it's a bit strange because it's not a race win, it's a sprint win, of course, but exciting nonetheless. I guess just the feeling of earning it is not quite the same as a race win, but very, very happy. I think a lot of things could have gone worse in that race, and I think myself and the team did a really good job of managing things and staying on top of things in what was a tricky race. So that's probably the aspect I'm very happy with. Of course, the cross the line first was also pretty special.
Ahead of Max Verstappen, the three-time world champion. Yeah, no big deal. Tell me a little bit about what the last year and a half has been like to get to that top step of a podium, because it's been a bit of a struggle. You've had to prove yourself. A lot of people saying perhaps you weren't worth all that hype, but I feel you might be.
Obviously the last 18 months has been eventful. It's been both ends of the roller coaster, very much on the right end of it now. So I think this year's been good to firstly be back in a race car again, the way that we've managed to turn around the season to now have a double podium and a double sprint podium, including a sprint win, is pretty special. And for me, of course, personally, it's pretty special to have those achievements, and to have them in my rookie season is very, very cool.
You're going to need to get a bigger trophy cabinet. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So that was Oscar Piastri winning the sprint race in Qatar, and we'll talk more about his race next. What a season 2023 is turning out to be for Oscar Piastri, who has sat on the sidelines, didn't get an F1 drive straight away, having won the F2 championship, had to wait a little bit, but my goodness me, his patience has paid off, winning the sprint race this evening in Qatar, finishing ahead of Max Verstappen, who, as I said in the interview, now is a three-time world champion. Oscar Piastri is the real deal, guys. You believe that, right?
Oh, 100%. And is that move where he signed with McLaren instead of Alpine one of the best driver moves since probably Lewis Hamilton made the move from McLaren to Mercedes? I would put it right up there. He's now, the first rookie to lead an F1 race in the last decade, the first rookie to stand on a podium in the last 6 years, the first rookie to take pole in a sprint race, the first rookie to win a sprint race. And I think, Alex, you looked this up, the first rookie to take any kind of F1 win since Vettel, right?
Sebastian Vettel, yeah. And it's really an incredible performance from Piastri. And McLaren have given him the car to do it. But what's even more impressive is the way he, over 2 weekends now, has shaded Lando Norris, both in the qualifying sessions and at times in terms of the race pace. Norris, of course, synonymous with McLaren for me. Norris was a McLaren driver even before he was one, connected in with the team all the way through his junior career. And you can see Lando is good enough never to take anything away from Oscar. He's a real sportsman like that. But you can see the weight of Piastri's talent across the garage, weighing on Lando in every single interview. He knows the Australian rookie that he's going to have to beat for years to come is very special.
Do you know what? In the media pen, the body language from Lando Norris was so interesting. Arms folded across his chest. Yes, he was smiley. Yeah, he's super pleased for the team to have a double podium finish in the sprint, another double podium. But you're right, Alex, that is weighing heavy on him. And actually, there's another stat that Lando Norris won't want to read, I'm sure, but I'm going to say it. He may not listen to the podcast, so I might get away with it. McLaren's second race victory in the last 11 years. And of course, who was the last person to take that victory? Daniel Ricciardo in 2021. Lando Norris has lost out to two teammates when it comes to a win. Of course, that Russian Grand Prix in 2021 slipped away from him with the terrible rainy conditions. But he's going to be a little bit frustrated. And I feel like, he now knows he's got a car that can win a race. And as Nico Rosberg said to him in the Part Fermi interviews, that means surely it's your turn next. But when will that be? Are there some tracks that we can pinpoint where McLaren are definitely going to be podium and win contenders?
Lando's time will come, for sure. And I know we have been saying that, but I think now McLaren, with another bolt of upgrades, let's not forget, in the last couple of races, on top of the big upgrade package they got back in Austria at the 9th race, they are now, it seems actually that they're quite consistent across differing tracks. I mean, Qatar has been a tricky track for most to get to grips with. High-speed nature, fast and flowing. We don't know what the Vegas track is going to be like yet, but we've got a pretty good inclination of it. I wonder if they might go quite well there as well. Looks
low downforce, actually. Relatively high straight line speed, the Vegas track. They'll be very strong in Qatar, the US Grand Prix, which favours the McLaren style of high downforce, although the circuit can be very bumpy, which can give drivers an issue around there if they damage floor elements and they have to lift the car up. I agree, Harry. I think they've managed to find a McLaren with this C specification, the next set of upgrades, which works pretty much in all conditions. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with. And actually, Lando and Oscar, and I suspect they've clocked it, being the competitive young men that they are, have more of an arm wrestle on than you'd think over who's going to lead that team. It's got a bit of Senna Prost vibe about it, that. Who's going to lead that team into championship contention next year? I completely agree with you. I think if it continues the way it's going and McLaren's form only increasing, their wind tunnel, which has been completely rebuilt and has been being recalibrated across the summer, has only just come online. These upgrades have been introduced without this new wind tunnel. And you think, right, okay, what are they going to do once this new wind tunnel comes online? Or now it is, and once they put the upgrades through that. But I think there's fireworks coming between Piastri and Norris. I think Piastri has now come in very quickly. Norris has had Ricciardo, an established driver, and he's got the upper hand of him quite quickly. He saw Ricciardo out of Formula One. But Norris now has trouble on his hands with someone like Piastri, who is so hotly tipped. He's got Mark Webber in his corner as well. I think there could be trouble along the way.
Ooh, exciting
Mark my
times.
words.
You've heard it here first. Yes, absolutely. Well, let's talk about the Qatar Grand Prix then, because it was actually a difficult qualifying session for the McLarens. When we're talking about all their success, of course, they lost their laps, didn't they, in qualifying on Friday evening. So it will be Max Verstappen on pole, of course, ahead of the two Mercedes, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. So how do we see the Grand Prix playing out? There are a lot of challenges coming the drivers' way. Obviously, we know the tyres have played a huge role this weekend. Potentially some safety issues, maybe Pirelli asking the teams to pit their drivers 3 times in the race tomorrow. What is it going to look like come tomorrow afternoon? Who do you think will be on that podium?
Much will depend on this Pirelli directive, which they're supposed to be giving us after the sprint race, which has obviously now happened, and before the Grand Prix. You absolutely nailed it in commentary, Rosanna, though, that they haven't really garnered that much more information from the sprint race, because we had 3 safety cars. So much of it was held under yellow flag conditions, and they weren't putting the load through the tyre. If we do have a mandated 3-stop strategy, it moves the race much more towards Ferrari, for example, who have struggled with tyre degradation throughout the year. I think McLaren will be strong in any case. Mercedes, I think, as potentially the next team up the road from Max Verstappen, at least on the starting grid, will desperately hope that they're able to run their own strategy, because traditionally throughout this year they've been able to hold on to the tyre for longer, so much so that they went for the soft compound tyre in the sprint race with a feeling they might be able to get it to the end. So it's a switch moment when Pirelli and the FIA come out with that decision on how this race is to be run tomorrow evening.
And interestingly, I spoke to George Russell after the sprint. Of course, he's heavily involved with the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association. And I said, what are your thoughts? How do you think tomorrow will play out? He has no concerns. He doesn't think it's going to be an issue. So that is going to be a really interesting one to keep an eye on. And of course, we will tell you all about that as we get closer to the start of the Qatar Grand Prix tomorrow evening. So come on then, is Max Verstappen going to see out the weekend with a win? Anyone come close to him in these tricky conditions?
No, is my answer. I think, although this track has been, I mean, that sprint was so much chaos and the track is slippery, no support race action in between now. There's been no support race action all weekend long. The track is going to be slippery and a bit green no matter what. We could well see more carnage, more safety cars. You can never quite predict Formula 1, as we've all said, but Verstappen seems to weather every storm that comes his way, and I can't see anybody beating him tomorrow.
I was impressed with the race pace of McLaren throughout the sprint race, but the energy system of that Honda power unit has been the difference throughout this year. This is a very high deployment, very low regeneration circuit in terms of the energy deployed and delivered by the power unit, and that is where Max Verstappen will just plain have performance, I believe, over the Mercedes engine McLaren, but we'll see how it plays out. I really, really hope that also Mercedes may be able to launch a challenge using that tyre longevity they have.
What do you reckon, Rosanna?
Well, I think it would be a fitting ending, wouldn't it, to the weekend if Max Verstappen walked away with the win in the Grand Prix as well, because, of course, it eluded him in the sprint, and I'm sure he's frustrated about that as he conducts all the interviews about being a three-time world champion. I'd like to see the Mercedes try and take it to him, though, with George Russell leading the charge ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And do not count Fernando Alonso out. Of course, this was his comeback podium moment in 2021 when he was in an Alpine. Again, perhaps an inspired choice to take an Aston Martin this year. He'll be starting from P4. So it's all to play for. It's going to be an interesting Sunday. We've had an incredible Saturday here. Max Verstappen, a three-time world champion. Alex Brundle, Harry Benjamin, thank you so much for reviewing the sprint race with me. Plenty more action coming our way. Tomorrow evening, the Qatar Grand Prix will get underway at 6 o'clock. You can join us, though, at 5:45. We'll be on the BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra channel. Hopefully you'll join us for some more action here under the lights in Qatar. Oh, I can't believe it. We've had so much action already, but there's always room for more, isn't there? This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.